close it, and we're gonna figure out how to do all of it from the start. I'm pretty much gonna pretend that I have never worked on this before, and I actually have everything that I wrote down yesterday while I was working on this in a page document. It's gonna be really bad because I never formatted it and it has some curse words, so I'm sorry guys. Okay. Okay, so what do you guys think would be the first thing we'd have to do if we want to work on this app and we haven't done anything before? Like you didn't do the setup with me or anything.
You have to go on Git and make sure it's properly connected to the GitHub for the app.
Yeah, so you pretty much need the code to work on it. So you want to pull it from the GitHub. And by the way, you guys don't have to follow along or anything. Just pay attention. I'm going to be doing breaks every 10 minutes or so, and you guys are going to be getting groups of 2 to 3 and talk about what I said. Okay, so github.com. I'm guessing the repository will be called SHPE. So there's 2 repositories here. One of them has this thing called JavaScript, and it's like in yellow, and the other one doesn't. I guess there's more than 2, but these are the 2 main ones. The one that has JavaScript, what that means is that there's actual code inside of that repository. That's the one that we're going to be using. Okay, so to pretty much download this, you kind of just follow these instructions. So it says step 1, install node.js. You follow this tutorial to get the React Native running up. I'm not going to do that right now because we did do that before. But you would just follow these instructions if you've never done it before, and of course I would help you out during our meetings. And then you clone this repository. So I'm going to do that. So for me to clone it, I open up my terminal. And I'm going to, when I open up my terminal, it pretty much starts me at my root folder. But I don't want to use SHPE, like work on the SHPE app on my root folder. I want it to be in an easily accessible folder or location. I pretty much always just put things on my desktop. So my desktop's a mess. But pretty much for Mac, it's just CD desktop and you're already there. And I want to clone it. Some of you might not have the Git commands already input into your like terminal or your command prompt or whatever. I can help you guys out with that like next time when we actually start coding. But you pretty much need to Git whenever you want to do any sort of Git commands. There's Git push, Git clone, Git pull, and they all do different things. And I'm gonna have like a small Git workshop next meeting, whenever that is. And when you do Git clone, it needs pretty much an address for where you want to clone from. That's what this is for. You can actually click this button right here on the right. Boom, and it's already copied onto your clipboard. So you just paste it and press enter, and it tells you that SHPE already exists because I already did this. So I'm actually going to move that. Really quick. I'm going to put it in a resume. Okay. So I'm going to try again. Okay, so now cloned and it's right here. So if we were to open this and we want to examine it a little bit, because honestly we know nothing, there's a few things that I'm going to tell you. We're using React Native right now. React Native is a cross-platform programming, like you can call it an API, but it's like packages sort of. And it pretty much has Android native code, iOS native code, and cross-platform code. We actually aren't doing any sort of Android native or iOS native independently. We're only working cross-platform just so we can have one code base whenever we want to update anything. Makes it a lot easier to work with. So this folder is for Android, this folder is for iOS, but we are only pretty much working on the SRC folder. So this has all of our folders. This is kind of ugly for me to read. I don't know if you guys are like how you guys like code, but I pretty much open up my projects inside of Atom. To open a project in Atom, you just grab it and drop it into there. So just drop it. It's gonna be like, what am I doing? And I'll be like, I don't know. And here it is. So then this has everything like organized pretty well, and you can just click it once and it'll open it. There's a lot of things here: actions, assets, components, config, data, reducers, screens. Very complicated. We're not gonna get into all that just because it will like take too long to explain. But pretty much, I want to add a feature. So first thing I want to do is see how the app looks like right now. So I want to try running it. If we go to the GitHub, it actually has run commands, I believe. Yeah, so running the app. It says if you're running the simulator on Android, let's just pretend it says Android, not Android Studio, you need to open Android Studio and run an emulator before actually typing in the command to start it. If you're going to run it on iOS, all you need to do is have a Mac, because you actually can't code for iOS if you're not on a Mac, and put react-native-run iOS. Okay, so we're going to try that, and then I'm going to have you split up into groups and then try to tell each other what I just said, because I know it was a lot. So I'm going to do that first, though. Okay, so what it just told me was, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What's run iOS? The reason why it's saying that is because I'm still on my desktop. I need to go inside of my SHPE app folder to actually run this. And it's actually going to give me another error once I do that. So I'm going to try it one more time. And it's going to say, I still don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like you need to figure out what you have to do. So it pretty much says you have to run npm install if you're in a React Native project. Our React Native project has these things called dependencies. And that's how npm install knows what it needs to install. Usually you don't have to manage any of this yourself. Using like npm, it'll pretty much update the dependencies for you as long as you tell it to, which I'll tell you how to do that later. But pretty much you just write npm install. It's going to install every single package that is related to our project, and then we can start running it. Okay, so now we have everything installed, so now if I try it again, it should work. Okay, so like I said, if you're on Mac, you can run the emulator for iOS. It'll just open up Xcode in the background, then open up the emulator, and it'll automatically load up the app. I'm going to show you how to do Android, but not right now. I want you guys to group up really quick and talk about this. So right now, it's like doesn't have anything on the screen, it's just a regular phone. But it's actually loading it right here. Once it does this, it'll automatically open. It's right here. A lot of what this is doing is it's actually downloading the app onto the emulator. Because this emulator is like an actual phone on your computer. Like you can do pretty much almost anything a phone can, except make calls, I guess, because you don't have a cellular account linked to it. Okay, well, while this loads up, you guys can just split up into groups. Do 2 to 3. And then I'm going to tell you a few topics that I want you to talk about. It's okay if they're like 4, honestly. What?
React Native comes with Node.js, right?
Yeah, so React Native is kind of like a package that you can download through Node. We already have dependencies for it, so when you do npm install, it'll install everything. But yeah, it's pretty much part of Node. Okay, so pretty much what I want you guys to talk about is how to run the emulator, how to clone it from GitHub, and I want you guys to talk about a little bit what npm install does, what dependencies are. If none of you can answer any of these questions, you can ask me. What's up?
What was the command for Git? How to clone?
It's git clone, and then you have to get the actual address from Git. But again, you guys don't have to follow along or anything. This is just a learning experience, and I'm recording it. But you can. More power to you. But yeah, just make sure to ask each other, hey, what does npm install do? How does it know what to install? How do dependencies work? What are dependencies? What does npm stand for?
What was it? Node package manager.
Come on, guys, you can ask each other.
I mean, like, I don't even know how to like. That was good.
Okay.
That's okay.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm at the right folder.
So,
Yeah.
pretty much, you don't, I'm not expecting you guys to know like all this, I just kind of want you guys to talk about it and get a little bit more comfortable with it. You guys are still gonna have trouble when you're coding, like, it's still gonna be hard. You're gonna have to do things that I just have to do here, just go back to hard and before, so some things are already installed into my computer, so I need to run a little bit better. But it's kind of just more just being comfortable, so I just want you to talk about what you do know, and then realize that, oh, I don't know this, or I don't know this. I want you to
Directory.
Oh yeah,
No, just get to my
get
desktop.
this app done, and then you get stuck, you don't work for like 2 weeks, and you're like,
And if you type DES and then shift tab.
I want you guys to know what you don't know, so you know how to learn what you don't know.
So.
Okay.
So
So
really independent.
you guys remember more or less what I did? Like I uploaded it and then yeah, that's what I was doing.
I
Okay,
guess.
so
But I
I
don't
pretty
know
much wanted
necessarily.
to I looked at it directly. And I
I would
wanted to know
apply
how
something.
this would how
So,
it
I mean,
more or less.
maybe-
So I opened it inside the app.
I would say like the emulator,
Right. Yeah, and I opened
the
it inside the app, so I
dependency
can
of
actually
the
look.
emulator instead of the shell tab.
Yeah, you can use that. Just open the project inside of it.
Well, maybe vice versa.
Yeah. Don't open any.
I don't know like how it works like in this case.
SCR folder?
No, the SHPE CF folder.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so where is it?
So, do you already install it?
Okay, so
You
do,
didn't get
what was the abbreviation
Okay,
of the end?
You wanna try, I guess you wanna try emulating it? Like, do that, is that what you're asking? You're on pause, right? Okay. So, you need to install Android Studio if you want to. But,
Oh,
Android Studio,
install it.
but again, you guys don't have to follow.
Yeah, if it's the emulator.
But pretty much, I'm gonna show you guys how to open Android Studio. It's just Android Studio. And then inside of there, you download different emulators.
After you go to the SHPE stuff app and the thing, how do you tell it to go run the
Okay, so do you have Android Studio installed on your computer? No, so Android Studio is something else. Pretty much, if you're on a Windows, you're not gonna be able to run this emulator this easily. You need to download Android Studio, and then when you're inside of Android Studio, you need to download an emulator from there. I'm gonna show you how to do that right after this, but you guys don't have to like talk about that right now. Talk more about the higher level things, like the concepts.
Okay, alright, another question. What language do you use for coding?
The coding, the main language is JavaScript, but it honestly doesn't really look like JavaScript is like just like any other programming language. Honestly, it looks very similar to other programming languages, but this does not because it's React Native. It's a very different way of thinking, honestly.
He said
I don't know if I was with that.
like next time. But you're not sure if that's right.
So Atom is a text editor, but you can use
I mean,
any text
I
editor.
know-
So
I know
like
that.
full Sublime, you use Visual Studio Code, you use Atom.
Well, I can't just really do what he's doing for a project I did, and then it just.
He's gonna show us
everything.
Android today.
So, I don't trust him.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, you don't
not
have
Adam,
to.
bro. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Adam, cause like,
I
it
like
happens twice.
Is that normal or?
No, apparently it was, I looked it up and like some people have the same.
Okay, it might have something to do,
So I downloaded Visual Studio,
like
like
some weird download, but yeah, Visual Studio Code, I actually used it recently, and it's a text editor, but it also has a debugger.
so they can
It's honestly really nice.
Yeah.
It literally
Well,
tells you what
that's-
every variable has inside of
And
it.
you could
You
even
can
do
also
it
that.
necessarily have to do with that.
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
like
Okay,
Visual
it's
Studio.
really good, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a Microsoft.
So
Oh.
I'm not using that right now
Git,
because I don't know it as well as I do
so
Atom,
it's like Git.
but I did use it once and it was really good, and I'm probably gonna switch to that. Okay, what's up? I heard you guys wanted to ask me something.
Alright, so, we're not sure if we have the right folder.
Well, no, more so, I know you want us to talk about like,
Yeah.
the dependencies,
Okay.
but I didn't really catch
Okay.
all that stuff.
So what dependencies are, it's pretty much a list of things that this program needs to run. And the reason why you even have this list is because you want to automate the download process. So what npm install does is it goes into your dependencies folder and it will be like, oh, I need to download this, and it will like go down the whole thing. Yeah. But the thing with dependencies is that some dependencies actually depend on other dependencies. So you don't need to worry about this too much, but I guess it's nice to know. It's pretty much if you guys have done any sort of algorithms like graph theory,
Yeah.
it's depth first search. So it goes all the way to the end and then downloads that and then comes back, downloads that, and it keeps going. But you don't need to know that for this. Like that's just
Are
if you have
the
an
Android one
question.
too?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the Android one. I think you guys talked pretty good. Okay. So for the Android, I'm gonna have to close this, stop this. By the way, if you guys ever want to stop something on your terminal, for me it's Control C, and that pretty much just terminates any process you have running. On different computers, on different like terminals or command prompts or whatever, it might be different things. You might just have to look it up for your computer. But yeah, there is commands for that. Just letting you know. So now if I want to run it on Android, I'm going to try to do the same thing just so you guys can see what happens. So I'm going to say React native run, and it's going to be Android. It's honestly pretty intuitive on what to write if you already know the iOS one. So it's going to try to run it. It might take a little while, and this is a waste of time because it's going to fail. Okay, it didn't take that long. It pretty much said it could not install the app on the device. And the reason why is because the device it needs to install it to is an Android, and we don't have any of them like connected or running or anything like that. So to do that, we're going to open up Android Studio. Android Studio is pretty much how you code for Android native. It's made by I believe Oracle, because they're not Oracle, sorry. Who owns Android? Google. It's made by Google, and it's pretty much you code in Java, because Android's native code is Java. But and then iOS native code is called Swift, but you can also use C#, I believe. So for me, I have a bunch of stuff here because I've already opened it. This right here, I believe is our project, but it's our previous one that I was doing yesterday, and I'm not going to open that one right now. I'm going to open an existing one, however, and this is kind of weird the way it works. You need to open an Android app, but we don't have an Android app. We kind of just have a cross-platform app. So what we have to do is, I'm going to go into desktop if I can find it, and right here, we do have an Android folder. So that's pretty much what I went through. Was I was like, I honestly have no idea how to do this. I've never like tried doing the Android Studio version. I've always just done iOS because I have had the Mac. But I pretty much just I pretty much went inside of Android and I was like, oh, maybe I have to open this Gradle file because Gradle is kind of like it kind of builds stuff. The Android project, that's what it's for. And I tried opening that didn't work, and I was like, okay, well maybe this. So I clicked that and opened it, and that actually worked. But when I opened it, it told me I had to update some stuff. Whenever you open this, it's gonna be like, oh, you can update all these things. It's amazing. And I'd say no to most of them because you'll like not be compatible with a lot of the dependencies that we have installed already. So like right now, it's like update Gradle, and I'm like, no, you're gonna break everything. Don't remind me again for this project. There's something else that it asked me to update, which it might not ask you guys because you guys are probably downloading a new copy of Android Studio. It asked me to update my build tools. Definitely update that because that doesn't affect the project. That's just your actual program. So right now I have it here. It's all here. I'm not going to touch any of that code. I'm actually not going to do any code editing on the Android Studio. The Android Studio is only for the emulator. Whenever you want to run an emulator on Android Studio, there's this little button right here. It's called AVD Manager. It's called that means stands for Android Virtual Device. You're probably gonna have to download some of them yourselves, and they're honestly pretty big files. But I already have some downloaded, so I don't have to wait. To download them, you pretty much go to Create Virtual Device, and you like do some stuff. Honestly, you should just look up a video. It is prone to like a lot of errors when you do it. But I'm just gonna run it on the Nexus 5X. Okay, so now that it's running, I should be able to run Android, and it should work. It'll pretty much automatically detect that there's a device running that's an Android and that's capable of running this, and it'll download it onto there. It's honestly going to take a little bit, but then once it does that, it will open the app, and it will have the same exact screen as the iOS one. Do you guys have any questions for me? Okay, so you guys remember what I said? Pretty much like the whole thing. I don't know.
Well, I just want to ask, so if you're not on a Mac, is there any way that you could download
Xcode.
an iPhone device onto that Android Studio and do the internet?
So possibly, but it's very complicated. And honestly, since this is cross-platform, it doesn't really matter. You can just code on the Android device, and it'll look almost exactly the same on the iOS device. So it's not too big a deal. Is it already installed? Okay, so the app's right here. I'm going to open it. Okay, and then here it is. So last time you saw that, it actually took me to a newsfeed as soon as I downloaded. We actually already have a login system with accounts already made. So you're pretty much going to be introduced to this screen whenever you download it. If you don't have an account, which none of you do, you're going to click sign up now, and you're going to fill this up, and it's going to add this information to a database that we already have. If you're worried about your password or anything, you can just not put your actual password, but it is all encrypted. So it's not like I can see it. But I'm not going to do that because I do have an account. I'm going to log in if I can figure out how to do anything. Yeah. So to make an account, this is kind of ugly. This is something we need to fix, but I'm not doing that right now because I don't know how. This is so ugly. I literally can't see anything. Yeah. So you pretty much have to use a Knight's email to have an account here. So you have to be a student. Oh, I did it all wrong. Let me see. So it needs to be a knights.ucf.edu email. Actually, I think we have it only set so it has to be .edu because we want to have this app running in other schools as well and other SHPE chapters later on in the future. But when it logs in, it pretty much sends a request to the database. It's like, is this an authenticated user? If it's not, which I should have probably shown you what it does, but it pretty much doesn't let you in. So this feed is a feature we added. It pretty much is like a news API, but we're not going to worry about that. That looks good. This is the events. This also has a glitch, but I don't know how to fix that one either, so we're not going to do that one either. This is pretty much, this actually only happens on the Android, but it's just a warning. So it's not too big a deal, but we are going to want to fix this later on. And whenever you get these messages, sometimes they're going to have a lot of text, and you're going to be like, this is useless. It's not. Most of the time, it tells you almost exactly where the error is. You're just going to have to try to really understand what it's saying. So this one. So what I want to do actually is right here. So I want to try to be able to select a photo when I click this. My original intention was to make it so I can update the photo, but I did not get through the, I was not able to like do the whole thing, so I'm not going to do that because that's pretty complicated. This is just going to be, so what do you guys think would be necessary for me to do that? Like for me to be able to pull up all of our photos from our phone and then select one. It's honestly like as intuitive as it sounds.
Dependencies.
No.
There needs to be some sort of interfacing between the app and the data on your phone.
Yeah, and there's actually, so if you want to do that, what I did, let me see what I wrote down in my document. Okay, so create an account. I want to talk about this, but I'm gonna do that later. So I wanted to figure out how the server works because my original thing was to add an image, but I'm not gonna do that now because that's not what we're gonna actually do. So what I wanted to do was have an interface, right? So I don't want to make my own because honestly someone's already made one before and there's no point in me like trying to kill myself making this thing that it's a problem that's already solved. So I looked up online React Native image picker, and I pretty much found two things. I found this, which is a plugin made from that someone else made, and they added it to like their GitHub, and it's now accessible to anyone who wants to use React open source projects. And I also found on the React Native website, I forgot what it was called, but if I go here, I can actually see it. So they actually have a lot of documentation, and it looks really pretty, and it's like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is gonna be so easy, anything I want, I can find it here. It's honestly disgusting. It's like very hard to find things here, and it's sometimes very like hard to do what you actually want to do with what they give you. But they do have everything here. So if I look up camera, there's a thing called camera roll. This is built in native to React Native. So what this does is you can either save to camera roll, which is get a picture from the internet and save it, or you can get your photos from your device, which is exactly what we want. So I pretty much was looking through this last night, and I was like, okay, not bad. You just got to do, pretty much just got to do camera roll dot get photos, and put in the parameters. And I'm like, okay, so let's see what the parameters are. All right, params. It's an object. It's required. And it has a shape described below. And then I look at this and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to fill in all this information. So I'm like, oh, maybe the guy that made the plugin has already done all this for us and it makes it super easy. So I look at the plugin and I'm like, okay. Usually whenever somebody has plugins, they'll have the README. You know how every time you download something, it always has a README, and you're like, I'm not going to read that. Well, you should definitely read it if you're a developer because it has a lot of information for you. It pretty much tells you how to install, how to use it, how to do direct launch, whatever. So you just click on this, and this is the install. And I was reading through this, and I'm like, oh my god, look at all these steps. Oh no, what is this? And I'm like, oh, and I have to do something different for Android? And I was like, this is just as bad. And I was like, at this point, you can see what I wrote down. I said, well, but it was even uglier reading this setup, and then I was like, you know, dropping out and becoming a stripper really isn't that bad. I spent the next 30 minutes pretty much looking at stripper schools. And I was like seriously considering on like ditching you guys and not coming to this meeting. But I obviously didn't do that because I'm here and I'm a wimp. But when I look back at this, it actually wasn't that bad. The reason why I didn't understand it was because I didn't read it. I just skimmed it. It already has an automatic installation. It's literally this. Super simple. It's just one line. But it also says you have to do a few other things right here. but I want to dissect what this is doing pretty much. When we ran npm install in the beginning, right here, it pretty much just knew what's down because it had all of our dependencies already saved onto the dependency list. But now we're adding something new that we've never seen before, so we have to tell it what it's called. npm already knows how to look this up. It's pretty much just this name right here. This @latest, that pretty much is determining what version you're downloading. As you can see, it says some stuff here. Depending on what React Native version you're using, you might need to download a later version or an earlier version. But we have the latest version, or definitely a higher version than that. So we don't need to, we can just download the latest version. What this says right here, this is probably the most important part. That adds it to our dependency list so that next time we don't need to just do this manually. We can just say npm install and it'll just do it for us. So that's pretty much what I did. And I think we're going to stop here and talk a little bit because that was a lot. So things I want you guys to talk about. How do you open the app on Android Studio? Like what more or less do you have to do? If you want to code on Windows. What feature are we trying to implement right now? And what do we need to implement that feature? And what are we going to search up to try to find what that is? So just ask that with each other, talk about it, try to digest what I just said, because I know it was a lot. Honestly, I'm tired.
Alright. So, in terms of
when you opened up the program itself, were you into like the folder? You went to like a specific folder, right?
Right.
And
so-
on the emulator.
why would you
So what I did was it has a navigation bar at the bottom. So I was just kind of looking for what feature I wanted to add, and I went through this and I'm like, oh, the feed looks good. There's no point in adding anything there.
It's basically like the same thing.
The events looks good. There is a bug with that, but I didn't want to mess with that because it would have been too much. And the profile is good, but there's a lot of features missing. So we can't change the photo. We can't edit it. It was gonna be one of those two, honestly.
But like when you originally were trying to open it in Android Studio, you said there was like a problem there.
Right.
And so
What exactly
the thing
was
is now
Okay. So the problem was that it didn't have a device to install onto.
Yeah, so
So the solution was you had to open up an emulator that ran an Android device, or if you have an Android phone, you can connect that. But I think you still need to open up Android Studio to do that. Any of that. Android Studio is pretty much what manages the Android and that's pretty much how React Native knows where to find the device. Because I believe there is a way where you can run Android emulators without Android Studio, but you have to specifically say in the React Native run Android command where that is and what it's called. And that's way more complicated. So it's much easier to just download Android Studio. Does anyone have any questions? Isn't able to answer any of the questions? Don't be shy. You could be completely lost, just tell me. Okay.
no, you said they were talking about being able to put a picture or something.
it's like
Oh, but you
Yeah, it's
wait,
it's React Native.
I didn't hear that.
So it was run
yeah.
dash and the terminal command.
So you don't have it as space experience.
And then space
Computer science.
run dash Android. But that's only if you already have Android Studio installed and you have the device running. It's on the GitHub if you want to like just copy it. Because I know the GitHub has the second step is the run. And it has both the run iOS and the run. So the React Native is kind of if one of the dependencies that we have to install, but that's installed when we do npm install. Like in the beginning.
I already did that.
Yeah. So in the beginning, when we downloaded the project, we cloned it, and then we were like, okay, let's try running it. And I ran it, and then it was like, what the hell does this mean? What does run iOS? To know what run iOS means, we have to install React Native, and we have to install pretty much every dependency. that happens.
I'm getting a
I can actually
science
show
minor,
you
so I've gone through some of the classes.
what the dependencies are, but npm install pretty much goes through the list of dependencies and installs every single one of those, and then that allows us to run it.
Like my third year here.
And those dependencies, where do you get them?
I mean like
Those what?
The dependencies, where do you get them?
The dependencies are right here. So
I took like an intro. Just
pretty much, you know how I just installed this, or I didn't install it yet, but I went to this GitHub right here, and it says npm install react whatever this, and then dash save. That's how you put a dependency onto your code. You find a feature you like that you want, and you use npm to install it, and you have to say dash save. If you're not sure whether or not you're going to use this feature, don't do dash save. Only do dash save if you're sure that you're going to add it, because then when you push it, if you end up not using the feature, then we have this dependency that we have to download every time we want to run it, even though we're not using it. But that's pretty much what that is. And then this is our list of dependencies.
computer science.
Is in package-lock JSON. I'll talk about what a JSON file is later, but it's pretty much here. So if I do Control F and I do image, I'm probably gonna find it somewhere, or maybe not, because I have no idea what I'm searching for. It's called React Native Image Picker.
I just have one more.
It's not on here, but it's pretty much on there.
If you put something.
This has all of our dependencies.
And grasp. I had been exposed to it a little bit in high school, but you kind of get into it.
Right, like you don't need to know what these dependencies are. It's all automatic. Whenever you do npm install. Like in the beginning when we did that, it pretty much went through this and was like, okay, let's install this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And that's it. Any other questions? Anything you guys are unsure about? That's not like particularly code.
So you said the native language for the iOS is Swift and for Android is Java.
Mhm.
So, but we're using JavaScript for both of them.
Right.
So is that being implemented on both of them the same way through React Native?
Yeah, so React Native, what its purpose is, I can't tell you that I know exactly how it works in the background, but what its purpose is you have one code source, which is JavaScript, and it is a few other things that is particular to React Native, but it's pretty much just one code source, and it gets that code, it compiles it, and it pretty much regurgitates it in both Android, Java, and in iOS Swift.
It's kind of like a translator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it translates to both of them. There are things, however, that can't be translated to both of them, that can only be gone to one of them. So sometimes inside of our cross-platform code, we still need to do specific things. We need to check what device it is. If it's Android, we run this code, and if it's iOS, we run this code. So there are still things that we have to do individually for both, but for the most part, everything's handled by React Native. What's up? This phone is the Nexus. Yeah, I think any of them will work. You just gotta make sure you download it properly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it maybe if you get like a really, really small old phone, it'll look really disgusting. So don't do that. 'Cause I don't know, I think for the most part, a lot of the older phones with lower resolutions aren't really sold anymore. So we don't have to, even though we don't really have to worry about that too much. Like in terms of our programming. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one more thing before we continue. You guys are probably going to forget everything we just did after I talk about this. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I want to talk about what props are and what states are. So, in React Native, let's go into a screen and see what the code looks like a little bit. I'm gonna go into the profile screen because this is called profile, so I can only expect that this code would be in the profile screen. And it is. It's right here. And it looks really weird. There's some HTML in there. There's some CSS in there. And there's these things called states and props. I don't know what any of that is. What the heck? Well, I didn't know what it was either yesterday. So I went onto this website. Even though I've used them before, I didn't really... Okay, I'm just going to copy it, I guess. I didn't really understand them very well. So I went onto this website, and it's pretty much, it says props and states in React Native explained in simple English. And what it pretty much says is that props are immutable. Have you guys ever heard the word immutable before in your programming languages? Well, so what immutable means is that it's kind of a variable, but you can't change the value. And I know you guys are like, why would you ever need a variable that you can't change the value for? That doesn't make any sense. Variables are so you can store value and then change them later on. Well, props are actually used because in React Native, we have these things called like parent classes and child classes. And sometimes we want to send information from our parent class to our child class. But we don't want our child to be able to change it. That's like, I don't know. I want to think of a real world example where you don't want your kid to do something, but I feel like I don't want my kid to do anything. So pretty much it's just like that. So it pretty much says right here. In React Native, the data flows in one direction, from parent to child. So you use props. The reason why you have props is to have reusable code. For example, if you look at this website, even though this website is not a web app, you can make it kind of like a web app and use props. This header right here, this header might be different on different pages, but it's always going to be the same style, right? So if you use a prop, then it could be called, let me see, is that props? No, that's states. Okay, so it can be called, so that's the header. It can be called from a parent class right here, and it can say, this is our message. And then when you call it, it says this.props message. And you can use that code on every single page that you own on your web app, and it will always do the same thing, but you can still change what it is from parent to child.
So you could change what the message says for a specific child?
Yes, so each child can have its own message while it's all still using the same exact code.
It's like polymorphism, sort of.
Sort of.
Taking in a method from a parent class into a child class, and then
Yeah.
having it be specifically different per class.
Yeah, the thing with polymorphism is that that's more so for different inputs. And there's also, that's static polymorphism, and there's also dynamic polymorphism, which is I don't know if you guys have used Java before, but when you make a list, you can say list name equals new linked list. The fact that you can say linked list is that's called dynamic polymorphism. You don't have to know that for this though. So do you guys understand what a prop is?
Yeah.
So you guys think you guys can explain what a prop is and why it's useful to your neighbors? Okay, go ahead, do that.
Like a constant.
Yeah, it's basically
Yeah. So that would be this implementation. But I feel like in this case, it can actually be more, a prop can be more complex and more useful because in C, when you define a
So a
constant,
prop is just kind of like
so we say constant non-students, third students.
Kind of. So you can't change it in the child code base, but in the parent one, you can change it. So the final, if you make a final, you just can't change it ever. As soon as you set it, that's
So
it.
you could say like something dot flavor and then if you're talking about
So
grape
why would you
soda,
wanna do that?
it'll
So the child
automatically take
uses
the
it
value
to
of
edit on
grape
different
and
devices.
reprint
So
it.
that
So
because
instead of having to in C
because sometimes in certain web apps you want to change information, but you want to make sure that information is only changed on the child app, and you don't want to change.
It can happen on the child.
Yeah.
And the child, what is that?
So it's
Like,
kinda like a
one's a
combination.
system device and then the other
Like
child
a
is
defined function.
So what a child means in programming is that the parent kind of like calls it.
Okay.
So pretty much when
What
you're
is it for? So like, if you only make this website,
Mhm.
and then you wanted to use the same pattern for a mobile thing, that's what you're saying, you would use.
Or you take-
No, it's more so for if you have like this app,
Have you heard of
right?
Nick Alvin?
And you want to use the same header on different pages of the app.
Oh, okay.
Dude. Have you heard
Yeah.
So
of
like when it's big, right for us, child, it's out right for us.
Yeah. This is not a web app though. This is a website, and it's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same concepts. But yeah, so if you go here, it should have the same header, and you can make a prop for that. In this case, there's no point because it's literally the same exact thing.
Yeah.
But if you want to change what it says, yeah, if you want to have changes, you can. Yeah. Okay, and so did everyone understand? Was anyone like, I don't know the answer to that question, don't ask me, ask someone else? No, you guys all got it? Okay, so what don't you understand about props?
I'm just just getting into it.
Okay,
What's like the definition of it?
so the definition that they give here is, I don't know, pretty much, props stand for properties, so it's kind of like variables. But the thing with a prop is that it's a variable that you don't want to change inside of a method call. So you've coded in C, correct?
It's like set rules that like you don't change, but they're just there.
Right,
You
it's
don't
kind
know why they're just there. Or you make them yourself.
you make them yourselves, but so you coded in C, correct?
Yeah, I'm just starting out.
Okay, you're an intro to C? Okay. Well, let me do a little bit of coding really quick. Let's say you have int main. I'm not gonna put any arguments in there because we don't need them. And we have int main, and we want to call another function called int add, where it calls x and it calls y. And this is gonna pretty much just add them together. So return x plus y. If we call add inside of our main function, let me say 1, 2, then add is now our child class from main. Main is the parent of add. In this case, however, we're not using props. These are just variables, right? So we're telling it that this x and this y are these two values, but this function can change those values however they'd like. And the parent has no say. But we don't want that. We want it so that this cannot change it. It can use them for what we need it to, but it can't change it. Yeah, that's what the prop is for. So now we're gonna go into states, and states are a lot more like variables. Let me go back to the website if I can find it. Okay, so you understand props now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're talking about states. So states are pretty much mutable. What that means is that you can change it. Immutable, you can't change it. Mutable, you can. And of course, it's like a state. It's like a state of being, whatever. That's just like the state of that current variable. And I know it's weird that they're calling them states when they could just call them variables. Well, the reason why you use states instead of just variables, you don't have to read all this. It's kind of useless. But the reason why is because there's different. Sometimes when you want to change a variable on an app, you need to re-render the entire page, which pretty much means you need to like refresh it and make sure the information's there. But when you have a variable, you're gonna need to make something called an event listener. Event listeners are kind of like not necessary to know, but pretty much what they do is that they check to see if there's a change in anything. So like every time you click, like every time you do a click with your mouse, there's something on your operating system that has an event listener, and it's checking, oh, the mouse just got clicked, we have to do something. I don't know what we have to do, but we have to do something. So those are event listeners. Whenever you type on a text box, there's an event listener that says, oh, they just typed a letter, we have to do something with this letter. I don't know what, but we have to do something. Sometimes the event might be to just write the letter on the text box, but other times it might be to copy the text, like Command C. Like that doesn't write anything, it just copies it. So that's what event listeners are for. And what states do is they make it so you don't have to use event listeners because they're honestly a little complicated. You just change the state by doing .setState, and it will pretty much edit the page for you, and you won't have to do an event listener. You won't have to refresh. It's just one line of code to do all of that. So do you guys have any questions on states? So they're pretty much just variables, but their purpose is to re-render the page. Okay, explain it to your friends. Okay, what's up?
So what would you apply a state to? What would a specific what like a module on the page, or like the entire page, or like what?
Right, so when you're using states, it would pretty much just be whenever you have any information on your page that is subject to change. Like when we do the edit profile, we might want to change what the text says. So if we go over here, we're not going to do edit profile, but if we do, this is information that's like in there, like it's coded in. If we want to change it, we need to change the state, right? So we would have to do edit profile, it would get the new text, and then it would save that text and change the state into that text, right?
Okay.
But we can also still use variables, right? But we don't use variables for this because whenever we use a variable, it won't re-render the page. What that's good for is that it means that we can still do loops, like for loops, where it's like int I equals 0, whatever, and it'll go through I. Do you know for loops?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it'll go through all values of I, and it won't re-render the page every time, because if it did, that'd make it super slow. So you can still use variables as they're intended for logic, but for actual data that you want to display to the user, you should always be using states.
Okay, so say, given the example of editing your name. So
Okay.
let's say you open the name and you choose to edit it.
Okay.
So when you're editing it, it's looping through and waiting for you to submit that request to change the name. And then once you do that, it'll set the state.
Right, so pretty much if we put edit profile, and the way I'm envisioning it, because we can, I guess, implement it different ways, but I would have it so it pretty much creates a text box there that has that information already in there, and then you could just delete it and write a new name, and then when you click submit, then from there it will be like, okay, now set state to this new text, which is pretty much what you were saying, and when it does that, it'll change everything and it'll refresh the page and it will say the new name. The cool, another thing with states is that we use those to talk to the server, but I'm not gonna go into that now because honestly that's a lot. And I feel like this is pretty good. I think we're making like good progress considering that none of you have ever coded here before, like on this. Any other questions on states? Okay, so you guys can explain it to your friends and be like, this is it. This is what states are for. Use them. Yeah? Okay, go. Do it. Tell them exactly that.
But so with the variable, you don't use that because it doesn't refresh it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty much the main difference.
So it kind of would do background operations, but the states is when you actually want to show
Yeah,
something to go with.
on the screen. Exactly. So variables are for things that are behind the scenes. They're still client side, so it's not like a server or anything. They're still on the
So what I
phone,
was
but
saying is
they don't change any information on the screen.
the set state.
Yeah. That's pretty much
But
it.
like a stage might
Implement
like
your event.
a stage might connect with a variable and it'll
You can do set state and put a variable inside of there. Yeah.
Where the variable gives you what's a reference.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't touch.
But set state is a very CPU intensive like process, so you should only do it after you have your final answer. Like
But then once
don't put it inside of a for loop.
is,
don't be like
and he hits
for loop
then
Set
register
state
that
every time,
as the use
right?
of that page.
I don't know what's going on. Okay,
As
don't do
in,
that. Like, don't
the
do this.
state of the page has been
This is a-
changed.
this is a variable.
This way, I changed.
Don't do that. That will like slow down the thing
So
a
there's a
lot.
difference.
It'll make it refresh a lot, and it'll probably crash.
Instead
honestly.
of
So you're
Instead
saying
of
like
going
make sure it only does it when it needs to.
Right. So like,
okay, change.
because you want to change the variable only once. You only honestly you only need to. So you can do whatever variable thing you want to do here, and then after the for loop, you can do set state. And in the end, it'll still have the same result, but it'll be way faster. Okay, you guys got it? Any questions? Okay, so let's go back to that. So what we're actually trying to do. How much time do we have left? Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will finish this a lot quicker than that. But pretty much from here on, we're gonna try to implement the plugin that we found on the internet. Okay. So do you guys remember what we were doing before?
Trying to change the picture.
Yeah, we weren't trying to change it because that would be too difficult for the scope of this. But we were just trying to access our pictures and be able to select one of them. So we decided between camera roll or this one. So pretty much we just gotta run this command inside of our SHPE UCF folder.
Before we run that, don't we have to actually get, because there it's trying to download or it's trying to install some package from your computer on, or is it directly getting it from?
Right, so what Node Package Manager does is it pretty much has, I don't know if I want to like tell you exactly how it works because it's a little complicated, but it pretty much knows that if this name is linked to a certain list of files that it needs to download, and it handles all that for you.
And it'll search through the web.
It's all inside of Node already. So they have their own server that all of these things are saved into, and they all have names.
Okay.
And then you know what to download by putting what name it is. There's also different ways where you can do it, where you can say exactly what the address is of the download. But this is honestly way easier.
So what if you don't know if that person provided some code, but you don't know if that package that they're showing you
It's malicious.
is malicious or is part of Node. Like what if they were implementing it in like without using Node, I guess. I don't know.
So I see what you're saying. So pretty much you wouldn't be able to download it with Node. You would probably have to do some sort of manual installation if they
what
didn't.
we did with the pulling it from the GitHub.
Yeah, but it'd probably be a little harder than that. But yeah,
Okay.
it would be something like that, or it had to be manual. You would have to pretty much put in the files and dependencies. You probably wouldn't even be able to use dependencies because dependencies are just for downloads. But you pretty much have to download it into the folder yourself and place it where it's supposed to go and set it all up yourself. This does it all automatically for you. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we're just gonna run this command. I have already run it before on the other folder. A cool thing about React Native, about our emulators, is we can shake the phone. I don't know where the shake command is. Shake. Let me see. Can I grab it? No? Whatever. You can shake the phone and it'll bring up a debug prompt. I'm not going to do it on Android because I don't know how, but I'm going to do it on iOS.
And when you run it on iOS, it automatically pulls up the detector. Well, I mean the emulator. Why doesn't it do that for Android?
Because Android is not on any computer. So pretty much the reason why it does it on iOS is because iOS uses the same OS for both like iPhone and Mac, and it has pretty much whenever you have a Mac, it downloads this thing called Xcode automatically, like you don't have a say, and Xcode has emulators built into it for iPhone. when you pretty much run this, it'll pretty much just get the latest emulator you have installed and just run it automatically because it's like on a Mac. But Android Studio is not installed into any computer automatically. You pretty much have to install it yourself. And therefore it also doesn't have any sort of like root access or anything.
Okay.
So it won't be able to just open up by itself. You have to tell it to open up. Okay, so here's the app. So right here I have this thing. I have a hardware tab, and it gives me a bunch of commands where I can rotate left, rotate right to check how the orientation looks. But I can actually do a shake gesture. We have it so if you shake, it brings up this list. Like on your phone, you can actually just go, and it'll actually bring this up. And it has this thing called live reload. It's amazing. It's like the most beautiful thing in the world. You can just edit your code here, or here, and it will automatically reload it. Like watch, it's gonna break in a second. I'm gonna just break it. Save. It reloaded. It didn't break because I'm not in profile, but when I go to profile, bam, it's broken. Now I put that back because I don't want to mess with that. But that's amazing. Like honestly, that saves so much time. Because can you think about what we'd have to do if that wasn't the case? We pretty much have to close the app, boot it up again, which takes like 3 minutes every single time. And sometimes we just want to fix something really small. We're like, oh no. So this is amazing.
Is that on iOS?
No, that's on both of them. I'm pretty sure it's on both of them. If it's not, we can implement it on both of them. That's like not something that's built into iOS. It's like React Native.
Okay.
Yeah. So what were we doing again, guys? Yeah. I promise you guys remember. So we gotta get this. I'm gonna just paste it. We're inside of the SHPE UCF app folder. I'm gonna press save. I'm gonna press enter. Now it's gonna get it from the internet, and this is where I stopped last night because it was 4 a.m. and I had an interview at 8 a.m. that I missed, but I pretty much just wanted to get a little bit of sleep. So from here on, I'm blind, and hopefully you guys can help me out with the few skills that I've given you. Okay, so oh wait, I'm not completely blind. We still have a few more things to do. There's this thing here, capital letters. Important note: you still need to perform step 4 for iOS and steps 2 and 5 for Android, for the manual instructions below. So let's read what step 4 is, and it says for step 4, add all of these keys to your info.p list. Honestly, I looked at it the same way you guys did. I'm like, I don't know what any of this is. What the hell is an info.p list? I've literally never seen that before in my life. The cool thing is that it gives you the code right here, so you don't need to like actually write any code. You just copy this. But then I gotta find where info.plist is. I was looking through here and I'm like, all right, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. There's like a billion folders here. Like I'm not gonna go through all these folders. It's not there. It's not there. I don't know where it is. So I looked it up online, and then they told me that it was in iOS. In our iOS folder, and I went into our iOS folder and I was like, okay, so let's go here, and they said it was like in here or something, and I couldn't find it still, so I was like, all right, I guess this is it. This is where I give up. Good night. But no, I actually figured out that you can search things inside of a project. You can search every single file inside of a project by just putting search and directory on Atom. I'm sure you can do that every single on Sublime and Visual Studio Code as well. But I did what I looked up was this plist version because I knew that's how it was gonna look, and it pretty much found it for me. Look, info.plist right here, and I'm like, this is it. This is exactly what I wanted. I love the feature. And then I clicked it here and I opened it and it has all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff does, but I don't need to because all I need to do is copy this onto there. So I copied it onto here and I was like, all right, cool, save. Did it break? I don't know. There's a refresh button, by the way. And it's not broken yet, so we're good for now. The next thing was to do steps 2 and 5 of Android. Let's see what that is. So step 2 is we need to update the Android build tools. I talked about that before, but I pretty much already did that. Right? But it says that we need to do that in build.gradle. So let's see if it's already updated. We go into Android, we go into build. I don't know where it is. By the way, I'm blind right now, guys. Just letting you know. So I'm gonna look it up. See if I can find it. Build.gradle. There's some stuff here. Oh look, build.gradle. I'm gonna open this. This is just a bunch of comments. Oh no, it's not. Okay, so pretty much we need to, I think, add this dependency in there. Oh look, so it already has it in there. It says that it needs to be 2.2 point plus. I don't know what that means, but I'm just gonna put it in there. Okay, so by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, like if you're like a complete beginner, these are comments. The reason why it's all the same color is just because I don't have a color pack for a .gradle file, but they're not all comments. Only the things that have this are comments. Okay, so like this, these are not comments. This is a comment. You can put comments in the middle of lines. They don't need to be like, it doesn't need to take up a whole line. It can't just be like the end of it. Comments, comments, not comments. Okay. So the next thing it wants us to do is step 5. Let's see what that is. It says compile and have fun. Okay, I'll definitely compile it. I don't know how much fun I'll have. I think that means that it wants us to close it and then start over. What's up?
Quick question. So you still left the 2.2.3?
Yeah.
Adding the 2.2 plus.
Yeah, so I don't know what 2.2 plus means, but these are just dependencies, so it'll just add everything. It'll just download everything anyways.
Okay.
No worries.
So it'll only grab the one that it needs?
It'll probably just download both of them, but I don't know if I can get rid of the first one.
Okay.
Because I haven't tested it.
Yeah.
It says to compile and run, so I'm gonna probably close this and try compiling again. And see if it breaks. And it's honestly probably not going to break. But yeah, so those dependencies, just download that, and it'll probably just download both of them. It might have like the same files, and maybe we can test it out later. But I think as of right now, it's no point. Yeah, it doesn't break or anything, so we're good. Hopefully it won't break when we actually try to run it. I don't know how much time we have. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take to actually run it. So I'm going to just see what happens if I put some code in. And if it works really nicely, then I'll do it. And if it doesn't, we're done here. I'm going to discuss what we did. Okay, so if we look at the documentation, there was a section called usage. Let's click that and see what it says. Okay, so pretty much this top part, what that is saying is that we are going to get that thing that we installed already. It's called the React Native Image Picker. I don't know if you guys remember when we downloaded it. It was like 10 minutes ago. And we're saving it into this variable. The reason why we're doing that is because it actually, those files have some, it's a class. I don't know if you guys know what classes are, but it's a class and it has functions that we want to use. And if we declare it into a variable, we can just do image picker dot the name of that function, and we can use all of those functions. I'm just gonna copy all this code in because I don't want to read it. If you're on the internet and you're looking up like homework, you should probably read it before you copy it. Sometimes it can have viruses, so don't do what I'm about to do.
So your profile,
Mm-hmm.
is that also stored into a class, like your image, your name?
Each individual thing, no. So each individual thing on our profile.
No, not each individual thing. I mean like
The entire
your
page.
entire profile as a thing, and then each of those is a different variable that it has within it. like your name, your email, your picture.
Right. So yes, profile is a class. But none of this is actually saved in there until after you pull it from the server,
Okay.
right? So like it pretty much has variables that know that it's supposed to be pulled, that's supposed to pull information from a server.
Okay, so it doesn't store it like within the memory in the class, but the class does have variables that fit each of those.
Right. So if you look right here, this is what's pulling the information. It's this. It looks really weird, really ugly. I honestly don't like it, but it works. So it's good. Like right now if I change this, I could write poop. And if I save it and run it, it'll break because I don't know what I did. Let me try again. Okay, and it wrote poop. So those are how it's saved. Pretty much that's just the reason why it's encapsulated like this is because it's an object, and this is telling it that it needs to find it in the server. I honestly don't think I'm gonna actually implement it. I'm sorry, guys. We did all this build up for nothing. But hopefully you guys learned a lot. Do you guys have any questions? Because I want to talk a little bit about our next meeting before it's over, and I don't want to like overload you guys anyways.
Do you have anything or like a list of things that you might want us to look up on our own time?
Yeah, actually I do. If you have the time, you don't have to. But there's a few websites that are really good. That one website for React Native is very good. It explains prop states and explains a few other things if you look on other sections of it. And we are actually using this thing called Redux, which is probably the most complicated part of this whole thing, but it's also the least code of the whole thing. So pretty much Redux is more so a style of coding than it is like a language or like an API or whatever. It's just a way you talk about code, and it's very hard to understand. You're probably gonna have to like just look at it a lot, look at a lot of videos to really understand it. But hopefully, like you honestly, I don't mind if you guys don't look at this. As you like start coding, you'll probably start to understand it a little bit better and better, just through time. So looking up Redux is reduxjs.org, and then you can also look at React Native. React Native, it has a bunch of documentation. So the documentation for each individual thing is really bad, but the get started documentation and the learn the basics documentation is really, really good. So reading through those, following along what it does, is a very good way to understand React Native a little bit better. And if you guys have time, it's literally you just search up React Native or you search up Redux. That's pretty much it for the code. I'm gonna ask you guys some questions. I'm gonna pick on you guys. I'm probably gonna ask each of you one question. I'm sorry. But I wanna make sure that you at least learned a little bit today. Okay. You wanna go first?
Sure.
Okay. How does npm install know what to install?
I know what it stands for. How does it know what to install?
Yeah. I'll give you a hint. It starts with D.
Oh, dependencies?
Yeah. And what are dependencies?
It's kind of like a checklist. It's telling the npm what to look for, what it needs to like download.
Okay.
The server.
Cool. If I want to run this app on a Windows computer, what should I do?
Well, considering Windows, you can only use Android.
Okay.
So you have to run the Android Studio, run the emulator, and you would go and do the React Native, and then run Android.
Okay. If I want to install an emulator onto Android, where's like where I would go, more or less?
Like a specific type of phone emulator?
Yeah. So like, where on here would I go to install it?
Oh,
Just point at it, like
yeah, correct.
this one.
No, more to the right.
This one?
More to the right, a little bit, the little
That
pink one, the kind of pink one.
Okay, that one. Yeah. So that's the and what's that called?
An icon.
It's like any baby.
Yeah, I didn't remember that. Yeah.
Okay, it's called Android Virtual Device.
Okay.
Okay. What's the purpose of React Native?
React Native.
Yeah, like why are we using that? Why aren't we just coding for like Android or just coding
It's
for
like,
iPhone?
it's like multi-platform.
Yeah, and like, what does that mean more? It's like, what does it do?
So
with
you
code?
can like code like in iOS per se, and then it's like it'll save for all the it'll look the same for all the other platforms, right?
Okay, so pretty much what it does is you don't code in iOS, you code it in JavaScript, and it'll make a file of what you coded pretty much for Android and for iPhone separately, or not. Well, for iOS or whatever. What's a hard question? What's a hard question? Yeah.
That's a hard question.
What am I gonna ask him? Give me a question on something that we went over.
Props.
Okay. What are props?
Props are basically, it's like, there's a parent and there's a child. Basically, the props are like projects that you put in that can be changed. And then there's like another
They can be or can't be.
that they can't be changed by the parent, but they can be changed within the child. Right? Versus they can't be changed in the child, but they can be changed in the parent.
Yeah, the child cannot change them. They're not old enough, but the parent can. Okay. What are states?
States are like, they're mutable,
Okay.
and you can change it because it holds data just for like a certain amount of time until it's changed.
Okay. And what are they useful for?
So, the example that you give is like the name one,
Mm-hmm.
you have a name there, and then once you edit it, change the name, you change the name.
Well, why can't I just use a variable? Okay, why can't I just use a variable? Who can answer this question? Out of the people who haven't answered questions yet. Okay.
So, if you put variable, it'll re-render the page so many times. And like it'll continuously re-render the page and it'll run really slowly.
So if you put variable, it won't re-render the page unless you put an event listener. The reason why you don't want to use variables is because then you have to implement an event listener. But using a state, it'll already do it for you. What's another question?
Shape.
No, it's not a question. Okay, wait, before you go, let me just say really quick. Next week, I don't even know for a meeting, but do you guys know that we have different times, right, for next week?
Yeah.
Okay, so I put in the room reservation form, like on Tuesday, but they haven't gotten back to me yet. Chances are it's already full for next week, so we're probably gonna meet the week after, but I will be sending out an email, just in case, and just check your email, okay? But wait, it's only yet, you can leave. My question is, what did I want to do when I wanted to give up to you?
Wait, what? Wait, what?
When I was like,
That's the like the most basic thing you always want to do when you're about to give up.
pretty much when I wanted to give up from
COVID.
From, like, yeah, I wanted to become a stripper, but what did I end up doing like that I didn't do? Like what did I end up doing that isn't that? Because obviously I'm not a stripper right now.
I'm not sure what to say.
Okay, so I pretty much didn't become a stripper, but I was able to like continue like doing the project. What was the step that I took after I decided that maybe becoming a stripper is not the best life decision at this point of my life?
You had common sense.
Okay, but I pretty much what I did was I reread the thing that was giving me trouble because I was like, oh, I didn't read it, I just skimmed it. Yeah, and I just reread it, I looked it up, I like learned more information. Last thing. What is it that I want you guys to study?
Oh, you want to study Redux,
Okay.
Redux,
Yeah.
JS,
Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you guys. You guys have any questions before you go? I
For the email, like, cause I know I just did an email push for the leadership, do you guys have something similar, or is it through the mass, SHPE?
No, I have you. I pretty much have everyone who's takes a, like is on the attendance sheet. Is this your first meeting? You came last meeting, right? Okay,
Yeah, I
so
didn't even know you.
that's okay. So that's right. I told you like Tuesday about it. So yeah, I'll just so you signed in to the sign in, right? In the beginning?
Yeah, well,
The
the second
QR
part meeting,
the
that's
QR
all I did, and then I did the, oh, you talking about
the QR code.
Yeah,
Okay, so I have your email, so I'll add you, and you'll get emails.
Okay.
But yeah, I pretty much have my own email that I send out emails to everyone. I usually send out like 10 or 20 a week because I forget information all the time. I'm kidding, I don't send that much. I only send like 2 or 3 usually. But yeah, so any other questions? Okay, you guys can go. Thank you so much for staying, guys. I know it was a lot. What's up?
So, are you gonna have like a workshop they talk about, your serious or workshop routing?
A workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, so oh, by the way, leadership positions, they're still open. You can still apply for anything you'd like. Whenever we have our next meeting, I'll probably announce it. Or like who got the
So
roles or
it's
whatever.
like an
Yeah,
officer,
like
just to like help in the field?
Yeah. And then as for the hackathon, I'm going to be meeting with Night Hacks this weekend probably and talking with them about like what we're gonna do. 'Cause we are gonna be working with them. Okay.
For nationals,
Uh-huh.
they have like a couple hackathons like back to back. So they're like 24-hour kind of things. Do hackathons require you to be there for all 24 hours?
Yeah,
Because like,
I
what
took
if
the first one.
what if you want to like speak to employers?
You don't have to take a
I recommend not doing those
I took 2
hackathons.
points. There's 4
They honestly do take up a lot of time. If there's like a short hackathon, you should do that. But usually when you do a hackathon, it takes a while. So I don't recommend like at nationals doing those.
Okay.
Do those like when you're like on other times.
Okay.
Like
So
not
you
during
just
nationals.
you gotta.
Cool. Thank you.
I was
No
really
problem,
good at the theory. But like you also have to learn how to sing and listen to things.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to practice.
Did you have the same teacher who was, I don't remember his name, who was like white and blonde? That class
He
was
has, like-
tough.
Yeah.
For me.
But he's a good professor.
Damn, that class was tough. I didn't have enough time to practice any of this stuff, so like the singing was just like me going in there and like shooting in the dark, hoping that they would give me points.
I had a pretty chill TA, so but still like of course like you need to practice so that you can sing.
I was thinking of doing because I spoke to a music advisor and I was thinking of doing it in Valencia, but it's 2 separate classes. But it would also be cheaper and maybe easier. So I don't know.